The wind howled like a wounded animal across the frozen plains outside the small frontier town of Silver Creek. Snow swept across the empty street in thin white sheets, covering wagon tracks and footprints alike, as if the land itself wanted to forget whoever had passed through. Most folks in Silver Creek had long since barred their doors and stoked their fires for the night. Winter storms out here were no joke, they could swallow a man whole if he wasn't careful. But Abigail Turner wasn't like most folks. She stood at the window of her small wooden house at the edge of town, arms wrapped around herself as she watched the storm grow stronger. The lantern beside her flickered, throwing warm golden light across the room, but it did little to chase away the loneliness that had settled in her heart since her husband died 3 winters ago. Silver Creek had never been a kind place for widows. People pitied her at first. They brought casseroles and spoke soft words after the funeral. But pity fades fast in small towns, replaced by gossip and suspicion. Before long the whispers began. A woman living alone. A young widow with no children. A house at the edge of town where no man stood guard. In a place like Silver Creek, that was enough to make people uneasy. Still, Abigail endured. She worked hard, sewing clothes, baking bread for the general store, and tending the small vegetable garden behind her house when the seasons allowed it. She asked for little and spoke even less. Quiet strength had become her armor. Outside, the wind slammed something against the fence. Abigail frowned and leaned closer to the window. At first she thought it was just a loose board or a branch thrown by the storm. But then she saw it move. Her heart skipped. A dark shape lay half buried in the snow near the gate. For a long moment she stood frozen. Out here, danger could wear many faces. Outlaws passed through sometimes. Drunk cowboys stumbled through town. And there were worse things than men wandering the plains after dark. But then the shape moved again. A hand. Abigail grabbed her lantern and rushed outside, the icy wind immediately cutting through her coat. Snow stung her face as she pushed through the gate. The man lay crumpled beside the fence, barely conscious. His clothes were soaked through with melted snow, his skin pale beneath a layer of frost. His breathing came in shallow, painful gasps. "Hey, can you hear me?" Abigail knelt beside him. His eyelids fluttered but did not fully open. If she left him here, he would be dead by morning. Everyone in town knew that. And yet Abigail hesitated. Because she also knew what the town would say if they found out she brought a strange man into her house. The whispers would return. The judgment. The cruel smiles behind polite greetings. But then the man shivered violently, his body trembling like a dying animal. And Abigail made her choice. "All right," she murmured softly. "You're coming inside." It took everything she had to drag him through the snow and into the house. He was heavy, and her boots slipped across the icy ground, but somehow she managed to pull him across the threshold. The warmth of the fire hit them immediately. Abigail shut the door and leaned against it, breathing hard. For a moment she simply stared at the stranger sprawled on her floor. He was young, maybe early 30s. A cowboy by the look of him. His coat was worn but sturdy, his boots scuffed from long miles on horseback. But what caught her attention was the wound. Dark blood had soaked through the side of his shirt. "Lord," she whispered. He hadn't just been caught in the storm. Someone had hurt him. Abigail hurried to fetch clean cloths and warm water. Carefully she cut away the frozen fabric and examined the injury. It looked like a bullet graze along his ribs, painful but not fatal if treated. Still, the cold might kill him first. She stripped off his wet coat and boots, trying not to think about how improper the situation might look to anyone walking in. Her cheeks flushed slightly, but survival mattered more than gossip. After wrapping his wound, she covered him with thick blankets and pulled him closer to the fire. For a long while she simply watched him breathe. Slowly, the violent shivering eased. His face relaxed. And eventually, exhaustion pulled Abigail into sleep in the chair beside him. Morning came quietly. Sunlight spilled through the frosted window when the man finally woke. He blinked slowly, confused by the unfamiliar room. Then his eyes landed on Abigail. She was asleep in the chair, her head tilted to one side, a blanket draped over her shoulders. For several seconds he simply stared at her, trying to understand what had happened. Then memory rushed back. The ambush. The gunfire. The desperate ride through the storm. He tried to sit up. Pain shot through his ribs. Abigail's eyes snapped open. "You shouldn't move," she said quickly. The man froze, surprised by the calm firmness in her voice. "You saved me," he rasped. "I kept you from freezing to death," she replied. That was when he noticed the bandages. "And fixed your wound," she added. He studied her face carefully. "You don't even know who I am." Abigail gave a small shrug. "You looked like someone who needed help." The man let out a faint, disbelieving laugh. "Out here, that kind of kindness can get a person in trouble." Abigail looked toward the window. "Believe me," she said quietly, "I know." Outside, the town of Silver Creek was waking up. Smoke curled from chimneys. Wagons creaked along the street. And it would not be long before someone noticed a horse tied outside the widow Turner's house. It happened just before noon. Mrs. Whitaker, the town's most enthusiastic gossip, spotted the unfamiliar horse while walking past Abigail's fence. She stopped immediately. Her sharp eyes narrowed. Well now. Within an hour the entire town was whispering. By sunset the story had grown far more scandalous than the truth. The widow Turner had taken a strange man into her house. A wounded cowboy. And he had stayed the night. By evening, men at the saloon were laughing about it. Women shook their heads disapprovingly. And the preacher's wife muttered something about moral decay. None of them knew the truth. But the truth rarely mattered in a small town hungry for gossip. That night, as Abigail prepared soup for her recovering guest, she noticed the man watching her with a troubled expression. "What is it?" she asked. He hesitated. "People outside were staring when I looked through the window." Abigail sighed softly. "They'll talk," she said. "They always do." The man studied her carefully. "You saved my life, and now they're going to make you pay for it." Abigail set the bowl in front of him. "Eat," she said gently. "Let the town talk." But deep down, she knew something had changed. Because in Silver Creek, kindness had a way of turning into scandal. And the storm outside had only just begun.